It's as big a deal as the PC. That's what Steve Jobs reportedly said. Maybe bigger than the internet, speculated John Doerr, the venture capitalist behind Netscape and Amazon. Cities will be architected around this device, claimed its inventor. In January 2001, a leaked book proposal revealed that a mysterious invention codenamed Ginger, or IT, was being developed in a New Hampshire lab. The device would revolutionize transportation, transform cities, change civilization itself. The hype reached fever pitch. South Park created an entire episode mocking the speculation before anyone knew what it was. Theories exploded across the internet. December 3rd, 2001, Dean Kamen unveiled the Segway personal transporter on Good Morning America. Host Diane Sawyer rolled onto the set on what looked like a scooter, an expensive self-balancing electric scooter. It's sort of like putting on a pair of magic sneakers, Kamen explained. You think forward, you go forward. The collective response was immediate and brutal. That's it? The technology was genuinely revolutionary, but the hype had promised anti-gravity, and reality delivered a $5,000 stand-up scooter that you couldn't even buy for another year. The gap between expectation and reality killed the Segway before most people ever rode one. This is the story of how the most hyped product launch in tech history became one of its most spectacular disappointments, and how the technology that failed actually changed everything anyway. Dean Kamen was already a legend before anyone heard the word Segway. Born April 5th, 1951, in Rockville Center, New York, Kamen was the kind of kid who took apart every gadget he could find. While still in high school, he designed automated lighting and sound systems for bands and rock shows, earning enough money that his parents worried he'd skip college entirely. During his sophomore year, his older brother was in medical school, and Dean became fascinated by a problem his brother mentioned: how to deliver drugs to patients in controlled doses over extended periods. In 1971, while still an undergraduate, Kamen invented the first portable infusion pump. The device could deliver insulin, chemotherapy drugs, or pain medication in carefully controlled amounts over hours or days, freeing patients from being tethered to hospital beds. In 1982, he sold the company to Baxter International for a substantial sum, enough to fund his next dream. That same year, Kamen founded DEKA Research and Development Corporation in Manchester, New Hampshire. The name DEKA came from his own initials and Kamen's philosophy. This wouldn't be a traditional company focused on quarterly profits. It would be a research lab where brilliant engineers could solve problems that mattered. DEKA's offices looked more like a Victorian mansion than a tech startup. Kamen filled it with antique machinery, steam engines, ornate woodwork. That innovation could honor the past while building the future. DEKA's first major success was a portable kidney dialysis machine that weighed just 22 pounds, compared to the refrigerator-sized dialysis machines that confined patients to clinics. Patients could now receive dialysis treatment at home overnight while sleeping. The device literally gave people their lives back: freedom to work, travel, exist outside the shadow of constant medical appointments. But Kamen's breakthrough invention came in the late 1990s with the iBot wheelchair. Traditional wheelchairs, however advanced, still couldn't climb stairs or navigate rough terrain. They kept users at a lower height than standing people, creating physical and psychological barriers. Kamen envisioned something radically different: a wheelchair that could balance on two wheels, elevate users to standing height, and even climb stairs using gyroscopic sensors and computer-controlled motors that adjusted balance hundreds of times per second. The iBot was magic. Users could stand face-to-face with others. They could climb stairs. They could navigate beaches, gravel, curbs. Johnson & Johnson invested $100 million in the project. The FDA approved it as a medical device in 2003. Insurance companies balked at the $20,000 price tag and often refused to cover it. But for those who experienced it, the iBot was life-changing. And that balancing technology, those gyroscopes and sensors that kept a two-wheeled device upright, Kamen realized it could power something else entirely. Something that could change how everyone moved through cities. Something he codenamed Ginger. Dean Kamen didn't want hype. He wanted to develop Ginger quietly, perfect it, then launch it properly. But in January 2001, everything went wrong. Steve Kemper, a journalist, had been shadowing Kamen for over a year, writing a book about DEKA and the development of Ginger. Kemper's book proposal included quotes from Silicon Valley luminaries whom Kamen had brought to Dika to try the prototype and seek advice on launch strategy. Steve Jobs had written Ginger and reportedly said it was as big a deal as the PC. John Doerr, the legendary venture capitalist from Kleiner Perkins who'd backed Amazon, Google, and Netscape, had invested in Deka and supposedly called Ginger more important than the internet. Jeff Bezos praised it as revolutionary. These quotes were supposed to stay private until the book's publication, which was timed to coincide with Ginger's official launch. But someone leaked the book proposal to Inside.com, a new technology news website desperate for traffic. In January 2001, the site published excerpts revealing that a mysterious invention was being developed in secret. The quotes were dramatic, the secrecy tantalizing, and the speculation immediate. Within hours, the story exploded across the internet. South Park, always eager to mock tech culture hype, devoted an entire episode to mocking IT before anyone knew what it was. The show depicted the device as literally useless, a running joke that presaged public reaction. Kamen was furious about the leak. The hype was spiraling beyond anyone's control. Expectations were building to impossible heights. How could any real device, no matter how innovative, live up to comparisons with the internet and the PC? For months, Kamen and his team at Deka worked frantically to prepare for a launch they hadn't planned. They scrambled to get regulatory approvals, finalize manufacturing, prepare marketing materials. Originally, Ginger was supposed to be a sleek, lightweight personal mobility device. But as institutions expressed interest, the US Postal Service, Amazon warehouses, security companies, Deka pivoted to a heavier, more durable model optimized for commercial use. The consumer version would come later, once production scaled up. Time magazine secured exclusive access to report the unveiling, sending journalist John Heilemann to New Hampshire to ride Ginger and interview Kamen in the weeks before launch. The magazine planned a cover story. Good Morning America would host the televised reveal. The launch was structured like a presidential announcement, maximum visibility, maximum anticipation. By December 2001, expectations had reached absurd levels. Dean Kamen, who just wanted to build something useful, was now responsible for delivering a civilization-transforming miracle. And the device he was about to show the world was a scooter. December the 3rd, 2001. Good Morning America. Diane Sawyer stood in Bryant Park, New York City, ready to witness history. Dean Kamen rolled onto the set wearing his trademark jeans and work boots, standing on a platform with 2 wheels. No seat. No handlebars connected to steering. Just a person standing upright on a motorized platform, moving forward and back by shifting weight. It's sort of like putting on a pair of magic sneakers, Kamen said, demonstrating, you think forward, you go forward. You think about stopping, you stop. You lean back, you go backward. The technology was genuinely impressive. The Segway personal transporter used 5 gyroscopic sensors, multiple microprocessors, and sophisticated tilt sensors to maintain balance. It adjusted its position hundreds of times per second, mimicking the human body's natural balancing system. Lean forward, motors accelerate the wheels forward to keep you from falling. Lean back, they slow or reverse. It was intuitive once you tried it, requiring almost no training. The device could travel up to 12.5 miles per hour and run for up to 15 miles on a single 5-hour charge, costing about 5 cents. It weighed about 80 pounds. It had no engine, no throttle, no brakes, no gear shift, no steering wheel. It was an engineering marvel, the culmination of over a decade of research and $100 million in development costs. But watching Diane Sawyer roll slowly around Bryant Park, viewers at home felt underwhelmed. It looked like an expensive stand-up scooter. It moved at jogging speed. It couldn't go off-road or upstairs, despite sharing technology with the iBot, which could climb stairs. The consumer Segway couldn't replicate that feat. It offered no protection from weather. It couldn't carry cargo beyond a briefcase mounted on the handlebars. It required smooth pavement. And the price? Kamen said it would eventually cost around $3,000 for a simpler model, but the initial institutional models cost $8,000 with consumer versions projected at $5,000. Dean Kamen had invented an electric scooter. An impressive electric scooter with revolutionary balancing technology, yes, but fundamentally, still just a scooter. The Washington Post ran a piece titled "The Invention That Runs on Hype," quoting tech forecaster Paul Sappho, saying it reminded him of what the French existentialist professor used to say, "It is a cosmic fart." Critics raised practical questions that seemed obvious in hindsight. What happens when it hits a pothole? What happens when the seatbeltless rider goes over the handlebars at 12 miles per hour? What about rain or snow? What about getting stuck without power? Do you carry a spare plug? What about the law? Most cities forbid motorized vehicles on sidewalks, and it's too slow for roads. Steve Jobs' leaked quote came back to haunt everyone. He'd reportedly also said, in a moment of candor that didn't make it into the hype cycle, that the Segway sucked and questioned whether Kamen was sure your market is upscale consumers for transportation. Jobs understood something Kamen didn't: price matters. At $5,000, the Segway was a toy for rich people, not transportation for masses. Segway came from a high-priced naming consultant, a choice Kemper later reported Kamen had mocked during development. The codename Ginger had personality. Segway sounded corporate, bland, forgettable. But the cruelest blow was timing. You couldn't actually buy a Segway for another year. The Good Morning America unveiling in December 2001 was purely to reveal what it was, not to sell units. Institutional customers like the Postal Service and Amazon could order the expensive models, but consumers would have to wait until 2003. The gap between revelation and availability killed any remaining momentum. The mystery was solved, the magic revealed, and the answer was, you'll have to wait. In 2003, when consumers could finally purchase a Segway, sales were anemic. The company projected selling tens of thousands of units. The first year, they sold around 6,000. John Doerr had predicted Segway would be the fastest company in history to reach $1 billion in sales. That never came close to happening. The fundamental problem was that Dean Kamen had built a solution searching for a problem. He envisioned Segways transforming urban transportation, replacing cars for short trips, reducing pollution and congestion. He imagined cities redesigning infrastructure to accommodate Segways, special lanes, charging stations, parking. He believed genuinely that if enough people saw the device, adoption would be inevitable. But cities didn't redesign for Segways. Municipalities struggled with how to regulate them. Were they sidewalk devices? Then they endangered pedestrians. Were they road vehicles? Then they were too slow and vulnerable. Most cities enacted confusing, contradictory rules. Some banned them. Entirely others created Byzantine permit systems. Kamen's team spent years lobbying for favorable legislation, achieving some success in getting states to explicitly allow Segways on sidewalks, but the patchwork of regulations created uncertainty that discouraged buyers. The price remained prohibitively high. At $5,000, a Segway cost more than many used cars. It couldn't carry passengers, groceries, or significant cargo. It couldn't handle rain, snow, or rough terrain. It had a top speed slower than a bicycle. The value proposition was unclear. Kamen had done no market research, a stunning admission for a $100 million product development. He'd believed so deeply in the technology's revolutionary potential that he assumed price wouldn't matter. Jeff Bezos had told him, "You have a product so revolutionary you'll have no problem selling it." But Bezos was wrong. Revolutionary technology still needs a clear use case and affordable price. The market that embraced Segways was narrow and specific. Tourism companies offering Segway tours of cities, security guards patrolling large spaces like airports or malls, warehouse workers in Amazon facilities, police departments looking for something faster than walking, but slower than cars. These niche applications kept Segway alive, but represented a tiny fraction of the transformational vision. Celebrity accidents didn't help. President George W. Bush fell off a Segway at his parents' compound in Kennebunkport, Maine. The image of the president tumbling became a punchline. Ellen DeGeneres fell off one during her show. Olympic champion Usain Bolt was knocked off his Segway by a cameraman riding another Segway during post-race celebrations. Each incident reinforced the perception that Segways were difficult, dangerous, or ridiculous. The most tragic accident came in 2010. British businessman Jimmy Heselden had purchased Segway Inc. from Dean Kamen in December 2009 for an undisclosed sum, reportedly around $10 million. On September 26, 2010, less than a year after the purchase, Heselden died after riding a rugged country version of the Segway off a cliff and into the River Wharfe near his estate in West Yorkshire. The symbolism was devastating. The owner of Segway, riding his own product, fell to his death. The story made global headlines, cementing the Segway's reputation as a curiosity at best, a liability at worst. By 2015, Segway Inc. had sold only 140,000 units since launch, across all models over 14 years. In April 2015, Ninebot, a Beijing-based transportation robotics startup, acquired Segway Inc. with $80 million in funding from Xiaomi and Sequoia Capital. The acquisition came after Segway had sued Ninebot and others for patent infringement. Rather than continue fighting, Ninebot simply bought its accuser. Under Ninebot's ownership, Segway pivoted toward electric scooters, hoverboards, and other personal mobility devices that were smaller, cheaper, and more practical than the original Segway PT. The Segway brand continued, but the original personal transporter became a smaller piece of a larger portfolio. In later years, the Segway PT represented only 1.5% of total company profit. On June 23, 2020, Segway Inc. announced it would cease production of the Segway PT. After 19 years, the device that was supposed to transform civilization was discontinued. The official reasons cited challenges, including price, learning curve, and changing market preferences toward lighter electric scooters. The company would continue making other products, scooters, go-karts, delivery robots, but the iconic two-wheeled personal transporter was dead. Dean Kamen's revolutionary self-balancing system didn't transform transportation the way he envisioned, but it transformed everything else. The gyroscopic sensors and computer-controlled motors that kept the Segway upright became the foundation for an entire industry. Electric scooters, the kind you see on sidewalks in every major city, made by companies like Bird, Lime, and Spin, use descendants of Segway's balancing technology. Hoverboards, those two-wheeled self-balancing platforms that became ubiquitous and then burst into flames and then became safe and ubiquitous again, are direct descendants of the Segway. Delivery robots navigating sidewalks to bring you food, warehouse robots moving inventory in Amazon fulfillment centers, many use variations of the same principles. Kamen has received nearly every major award for inventors, the National Medal of Technology from President Clinton in 2000, the Lemelson MIT Prize in 2002, he donated his $500,000 prize to FIRST, induction into the National Inventors Hall of Fame in 2005, and honorary doctorates from more than a dozen universities. His influence extends far beyond the Segway. The broader lesson from Segway's trajectory is about the gap between invention and adoption. Dean Kamen created genuinely revolutionary technology, self-balancing vehicles that respond to body movement, controlled by gyroscopes and computers making hundreds of micro adjustments per second. That technology works. It's magic when you first experience it, tilting forward and feeling the machine accelerate to keep you balanced, tilting back and feeling it slow, turning simply by thinking about it. But technology alone doesn't change the world. The Segway failed not because the technology was bad, but because everything around the technology, positioning, pricing, practicality, and especially expectations created by hype, doomed it before most people ever tried it. Today, if you mention the Segway, most people either laugh or recall the hype. It's become a punchline, a cautionary tale about overpromising, a symbol of tech industry hubris. The image of awkward tourists riding Segways through cities or mall cops gliding across parking lots. Dean Kamen genuinely believed the Segway would change cities, and he had reasonable evidence for that belief. The device worked beautifully. It was efficient, emissions-free, space-saving, and genuinely revolutionary in its technical execution. The failure wasn't in the invention, it was in understanding how societies actually change cities, don't redesign themselves around new technologies quickly, regulatory frameworks move slowly, cultural adoption takes time, and most critically, price creates barriers that vision alone can't overcome. At $5,000, the Segway was a luxury curiosity. Kamen's refusal to conduct market research, his conviction that revolutionary products sell themselves, proved devastatingly wrong. The leak of the book proposal in January 2001 created expectations that no real product could meet. Steve Jobs calling it as big as the PC, John Doerr saying it was more important than the internet. Those quotes, meant for a controlled book launch, spiraled into months of speculation, that built the Segway into something mythical. When reality arrived, it could only disappoint the young literary agent who handled that book deal, later spent 20 years wondering if he'd killed the Segway through the leak. He investigated the story, tracked down everyone involved, and ultimately concluded the hype didn't kill the Segway because the Segway was never going to succeed as envisioned. The high price, the regulatory confusion, the lack of clear use case for most consumers, those problems existed independent of hype. Dean Kamen never expressed regret. He continued inventing, continued believing that technology could solve humanity's biggest problems. His water purification system, his advanced prosthetics, his educational initiatives through FIRST, these represent the same core philosophy that drove the Segway, technology as tool for human liberation and improvement. The Segway's technology didn't fail. It proliferated. Every electric scooter, every hoverboard, every delivery robot contains echoes of what Kamen built. The self-balancing personal transporter didn't transform cities the way he imagined, but it transformed the landscape of personal mobility devices in ways he couldn't have predicted. In 2020, when Segway Inc. announced the discontinuation of the Segway PT, there was a wave of nostalgic obituaries. Not because the Segway had succeeded, but because it represented something powerful. The belief that one invention could change everything, that engineering genius could overcome practical obstacles, that the future could arrive fully formed if only someone were brilliant enough to build it. That belief was wrong, but it was also necessary. The Segway failed commercially, but it succeeded in proving that radical innovation is possible, that human ingenuity can create technology that feels like magic, and that the path from invention to adoption is more complicated than even the smartest inventors imagine. The Segway taught us that revolutionary technology isn't enough. You need the right price, the right use case, the right timing, and most importantly, expectations that reality can actually meet. Hype doesn't kill products, but it can kill the possibility of a fair evaluation.